The Christians are fond of their supposed heroic origins as a minority persecuted for their honest and simple faith in Jesus as their Lord and Saviour. We've all seen those movies. The Christians, with their calm forbearance, wearing their whiter-than-white tunics and eyes uplifted towards heaven, suffering in silence the blows of sadistic Roman guards and the teeth of savage beasts. Thousands upon thousands dying for their faith, yet by their willing and noble sacrifice winning a martyr's crown for themselves, and in the process tempering the harsh Roman culture by showing the truth and superiority of their religion over paganism. This fairy tale shows up in apologetics again and again, usually in that appalling soundbite, "Would they have died for a lie?" Now, before Hollywood brought its own particular magic to the fantasy, centuries of monkish scribes painted an even more fantastical picture in words, the lives of the saints. In these lurid tales of suffering and triumph, survival from beheadings and dismemberments were commonplace. The whole genre had all of the fantasy, but none of the grace of Harry Potter or Tom and Jerry. So where do serious Christians get their information from? How has it become an assumption, rarely if ever questioned, that the early Christians were persecuted, that they died for their faith? How is it one of those things that everyone knows but can't explain how they know? The first historian of the church, Eusebius, bishop of Caesarea in the early 4th century, devoted great attention to the so-called martyrs of the faith. Yet even Eusebius could count only 9 bishops as martyrs and fewer than 2,000 Christians in total. Now, 2,000 people is not an inconsequential number, but across 300 years, that's fewer than 7 victims per year. Divide that number across almost 100 provinces, and you can see that persecution claimed fewer lives than strikes of lightning. Of course, persecution never occurred across 300 years, nor in all the provinces. The Western Empire was largely untouched by either persecution or Christianity. The first real persecution was during the reign of Emperor Decius in the mid-3rd century. This persecution had all the savagery of requiring Roman citizens to pour a libation for the health of the emperor. Some Christian fanatics refused. Yet Bishop Origen of Alexandria was able to record that in fact God protected the Christians and restrained the rage of their opponents. Those who died, said Origen, could be easily counted. Eusebius later added that God permitted the occasional persecution for the sake of discipline and correction of the brethren. The later years of the 3rd century were known as the Peace of Gallienus, when churchmen actually began to frequent the imperial palace. They owned property and began to gain political influence. In fact, the only true persecution was in the closing years of the reign of Emperor Diocletian and of his successors, Galerius and Maximinus. These emperors were frustrated by the negative influence that the Christians had on the army. Secret assemblies carried the death penalty, and church books were confiscated for burning. The persecution lasted less than a decade. In short, the persecution of the church as a sustained and bloody policy of the Roman state is a lie. The persecutions, so-called, were an invention of Holy Mother Church, fabricated for its own greater glory. It isn't true. It isn't history. It's more astounding rubbish.